Better Daily, where we work hard in our minds, bodies, and our spirits to become 1% better every single day. Download the app and join our Betterment family at betterdaily.live to catch the video version of these podcasts. Here's your host and my dad, Alex Van Houten.
What's up, Betterment family? This is Alex Van Houten in Better Daily Live. Happy Tuesday. It is Nutrition Tip Tuesday. And on Nutrition Tip Tuesday, we're going through something positive and powerful from a nutrition perspective to help you on your 1% better journey. And today we are singing the praises of coffee. I don't mean to sound blasphemous, but I love coffee. And my love for coffee developed before my understanding of the positive and potential awesome health benefits of coffee. But today I want to talk you through some of the clinical research around coffee and its benefits for you and how to keep it healthy for you rather than negative for you. And we'll talk about some alternatives if perhaps you're really sensitive to caffeine, but you'd like to cash in on some of these benefits. So before I get there, happy 31st day of the Faithful 40 Challenge. We have, counting today, 9 more days until we're done with this 40-day challenge. And I want to refocus you. Okay, this is the last quarter of the Faithful 40 Challenge, the last little bite-sized piece of making your strides toward your 1% better. And this is really important because I want you to be controlling the things you can control in your nutrition and feeding yourself well. And I want you to be working hard and consistently on the things you can control with regard to your exercise, that is moving your body well in an adaptive way. And I want you to be focused on your mindset and your reflection so that your mind's right and you can take those positive beliefs into the day in a way that's going to make a difference for you and the people around you. So stick with me. Coffee. Coffee is a wonderful thing. Coffee is an elixir from heaven. That's not a scientific statement, but that's how I feel about it. And if anybody has known me for a while, you know that I love my coffee in the morning, maybe a little too much. Fun fact about Coach Alex. I did the 23andMe genetic panel some years ago, and I have the gene that is really good at metabolizing caffeine. That means that when I consume caffeine, it gets through my system really fast, right? So that means that I can, on average, consume quite a bit higher amounts of caffeine before it becomes a negative thing for my body. That's a genetic thing. Now, there are some individuals who that's not the case. A little bit of caffeine goes a very long way for these individuals, and so they don't generally consume much caffeine. But I have the gene in, it's not a superpower, okay? It's actually a double-edged sword because sometimes that means that I have to take a break from caffeine myself, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's talk about coffee and its health benefits. First of all, where are my coffee lovers at? Raise your hand if you love coffee, or if coffee is a way that you start your day. If you're like, hey, I wake up and I get my cup of coffee and then, I go about my day. I'm not saying you rely on it. I'm just saying that you enjoy starting your day with that. Where are my coffee lovers at? I'm one of them. And it turns out that it's not just a caffeine thing. There are a lot of really positive benefits to coffee drinking, which I'll highlight for you in a second before we get to, hey, some of the things you need to watch out for. So first of all, a lot of people don't know this, but coffee is extremely high in quite a few essential micronutrients and antioxidants. Did you know that just one serving of your average coffee has about 10% of your daily value in B vitamins, vitamin B1, vitamin B3, vitamin B5, B6, B2, several of those things in one cup of coffee? And if you're one of those who drink 3, maybe even 4 and 5 cups of coffee in a day, that means that you're getting quite a few of your essential micronutrients and antioxidants from your coffee intake. In fact, the average American gets more essential micronutrients from coffee than they get from fruits and vegetables. How crazy is that? And I've found that my desire for coffee tends to decrease when I supplement with B vitamins all by themselves. So if I take a B vitamin supplement in the morning, I eat blueberries and those have B vitamins in them, and I eat red meat, which also has B vitamins in it. But B vitamins are necessary for releasing energy from your food. And I find when I supplement with B vitamins, then I tend to feel fine about coffee. I'm like, oh, I've had 2 cups, I'm good. Whereas when I'm not supplementing with B vitamins, I'm about half a pot of coffee into the day, and I'm like, I better stop because I've been very addicted to coffee in my life. And so I try to moderate that personally. So that's a really interesting fact. And in fact, not just B vitamins, but the antioxidants in coffee, those seem to be what gives it many of the health benefits that I'm going to tell you about in a second. Coffee's been studied. It's been a well-studied fact that coffee drinkers tend to see some health benefits compared to the population of people who aren't drinking coffee. And some of them might surprise you. So first, one of the things that surprised me looking at the literature is there's actually a lower incidence of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease in the coffee drinking population. When I say coffee drinking, I mean those who say I drink 2 or more cups of coffee per day. The individuals who report that actually see less Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease than individuals who say I don't drink coffee every day. So that's really interesting. Now, correlation doesn't equal causation. That means, maybe there's an underlying mechanism that makes me enjoy coffee that also seems to protect me from Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. But it is a really interesting thing. We haven't done interventional studies where we take random people and we say, hey, you are going to drink 2 cups of coffee a day for the next 10 years, and you guys aren't. We're going to see who develops Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. We have not done studies like that, and that would be a gold standard to find whether or not coffee has a causal protective effect against Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. But anyway, when you look at the research, it is very, very fascinating that those who report drinking coffee have lower incidence of those things. Another thing that coffee drinkers report is a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Now, I have some thoughts around this because you would think this would be opposite. One of the unhealthy things that can happen with coffee drinking is, a lot of people don't like that bitter taste of coffee. And so in order to enjoy, I'm putting it in air quotes, in order to enjoy their coffee, a lot of individuals will add a large amount of sugar to their coffee, which would put them at a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, would it not? Because type 2 diabetes, what it is basically your pancreas gets tired of pumping out so much insulin to keep your blood sugar stable. And so if you have a very high sugar diet, then you tax your pancreas and you become more insulin resistant, you wear it out, and then you develop type 2 diabetes because your pancreas is like, guys, I'm over it. I can't do this anymore. There's no way I can put out this much insulin forever. And that organ, stops working. And then you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and have to be treated for your inability to produce insulin. And so you think those things would be negatively correlated, but a closer look at these studies will actually show you that the individuals who report drinking coffee and have a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. In these studies, they say, are you drinking 2 or more cups of coffee per day without sweeteners? That's the kicker. and so when they're like, yes, then they place them in the population of what you might call a true coffee drinker, somebody who is drinking coffee without the addition of 30 grams of sugar, for instance, per 100 milligrams of caffeine. And so these individuals are reporting a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Now, I think that's twofold. One, I think the antioxidants actually protect the damage that high blood sugars can cause. So the antioxidants in coffee, how complicated do I want to get with this? Hang with me. Why not? Why not? It's Tuesday. We can be scientific on Nutrition Tip Tuesday. So let's do this thing. High blood sugar. So like when you consume something that raises your blood sugar really high, those sugar molecules in the bloodstream can actually cause damage to your insides, damage on your arteries, damage in your capillaries, damage in your organs. And so your body works really hard to keep blood sugar nice and stable because high blood sugar can cause damage on the inside of the body. Well, that damage in chemistry is called oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is just when there is, well, actually, oxidative stress. If you've ever left a bike out in the rain and it rained on your bike and then your bike got all rusty, the chain got all rusty, a rusty chain is oxidized iron. it has oxidative stress. The water created oxidative stress on this chain. And so now it's got rust on it. Now you got to put some WD-40 on it. You got to get the rust off. Otherwise, your bike's going to rust out. That oxidative stress is going to be a problem. Well, you have oxidative stress on the inside of your body too. And if you have antioxidants, say that with me, antioxidants, that's anti-oxidative stress. Those compounds can actually help to lower the amount of stress, the amount of damage that's happening on the inside, right? And so if you have antioxidants in coffee, then they can actually lower the amount of oxidative damage from higher blood sugar. How cool is that? The second thing that I think is happening with coffee drinkers and diabetes, and the researchers don't talk about this, but just from my practice as a trainer for a long period of time, individuals who are drinking coffee without very much sweeteners added and whatnot, they're actually conditioning their taste buds with bitter taste so that they don't have to make things so sweet to appreciate sweetness. If you eat the sugar sweetened Franken creamers that exist and you put that in your coffee, those are extremely sweet. And what happens is you start to condition your taste buds to register that as sweet. The dial gets turned up a little bit, like, whoa, this is really sweet. Like, this is how we perceive sweet. And so let's say you eat a good apple, it tastes like cardboard to you comparatively, like this isn't even sweet. But if you nix those sweeteners for a while, you just have your bitter coffee, it tastes like garbage the first couple times because you're programmed for sweet way up here and you're like, wow, this is terrible. But after a while, what happens is your sweet taste buds become more sensitive so that you can taste things that aren't as sweet as those sugar sweetened Franken creamers. And so I think something else that's happening here is we're conditioning ourselves through drinking coffee without much sweetener. I think we're conditioning ourselves to appreciate things that are less sweetened, and so we're not craving that ultra sweet flavor of things. And that's a big thing in type 2 diabetes. There are individuals who know that they have type 2 diabetes, who are being medically treated for it, who hate that they're being medically treated for it, and they can't stop eating plates full of brownies because they crave that sweet taste. There's a lot going on there, but we'll just leave it at that. Coffee drinkers also have a lower risk of liver disease. Again, I think this has to do with the actual antioxidant effect. Coffee drinkers actually have up to an 84% lower risk of developing cirrhosis. So that's pretty crazy. And then this is fun too. Coffee drinkers have a lower risk of depression and suicide. So people who reported drinking 3 or more cups of coffee per day had a 20% lower risk of being depressed. Part of that might be the stimulating effect of caffeine. Maybe you're just getting a boost. And so I know some people who cover up their depression with caffeine. I don't know if I'd advise it, but you can do it. And then in one study, they found that people who drank 4 or more cups of coffee per day, I know it sounds like a lot, but 4 or more cups of coffee per day were 53% less likely to commit suicide than the average population. So that's pretty wild. And you might think, like, is that just caffeine? In his book, Spark, John Rady talked about the effect of antioxidants on reducing the incidence of depression. So he talked about running, for example, as being one of those things that lowers oxidative stress in the brain, that lowers the amount of damage that difficult stressors have on the brain. And so that neuroprotective effect lowered the incidence and risk of depression. So coffee might be functioning in that same vein. And the last positive I'll say about coffee, and then I'll flip to the negative because I'm coming up on my time here. It's not a short cast if I talk for an hour, but I love coffee. So maybe I have to do a coffee part 2. Anyway, coffee drinkers actually live longer. So they did this really interesting study over 402,000 people, ages 50 to 71, and followed them for 13 years. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. 400,000 people, ages 50 to 71, and followed them for 13 years. What they found when they asked, do you drink coffee? How many cups of coffee do you drink per day? And then they followed them for these 13 years, that there was actually an associated lowered risk of mortality for coffee drinkers. So if you drink no coffee, obviously there was no effect in the study because that's what they were looking for. No coffee. You had, same population average mortality. If you drink 1 cup of coffee per day, you were 5% less likely to die in the next 13 years. Okay. So that's not very interesting. When you get to 2 to 3 cups of coffee, that's when it gets interesting and statistically significant. You had a 10 to 13% lowered risk of all-cause mortality. That means you were 10 to 13% less likely to die over the next 13 years. And then the category that seemed to have the most protective effect was 4 to 5 cups of coffee. And now we can't say that, like if you don't drink coffee now, but you drink coffee tomorrow, that you have a lower risk of death. Remember, correlation doesn't equal causation, but this is a really interesting finding that in the population of coffee drinkers, 4 to 5 cups per day, that they had a lower all-cause mortality rate. And I mean, this is a huge study. Okay, it's not like 100 people, 400,000 people studied over a 13-year period. It also turns out that if you drink 6 or more cups of coffee per day, your all-cause mortality goes back down to that same level as the 1 to 2 cup drinkers. So 6 or more cups per day is too many cups, according to this particular study. It's the 4 to 5 range. And so that's really cool. Now you might be sitting there thinking, all right, look, that's all well and good, but I hate coffee. I don't want anything to do with it. Or maybe I have some medical reasons not to drink coffee. Like if you have an arrhythmia or you're particularly sensitive to caffeine, you're not out of luck. If we take the idea that antioxidants from coffee are likely driving several of these positive benefits, you can do a few things. One, there is coffee in the world that isn't as caffeinated as most coffees. Most people are drinking coffee for part of that stimulating effect of caffeine, which blocks your adenosine receptors, so you don't feel as tired as you actually are. It's one of the things that caffeine does, in addition to boosting your workout performance. But there is coffee in the world with lower caffeine. Now, I did not say decaf. Decaf coffee has been chemically washed so that the caffeine no longer exists in it. And it turns out that it has a much lower antioxidant rate. And so many of the benefits that come with the normal caffeinated coffee that's not been washed by chemicals to reduce caffeine, that coffee is not actually helpful. So decaf, people drink decaf to make sure that they're not getting caffeine at night, for instance, but they want that bitter cup of coffee taste, but it's not actually giving any health benefits. Okay, so don't hear that. But there are coffee beans that have a lower amount of caffeine naturally, and you could opt for a coffee like that, right? So the coffee beans that I enjoy, they're somewhere between 100 and 150 milligrams of caffeine per serving. There are coffee beans that have 10 times less caffeine than that. And so you just look for coffee beans with a lower caffeine rate. It turns out that your medium and dark roasts have lower caffeine than your light roasts usually. And there are different, I'm not a coffee expert on that front, but there are different species of coffee bean that have lower caffeine intake. And then it might be a taste thing. It might be, some people are actually sensitive to coffee. Like maybe they have an allergy to coffee beans themselves, in which case I would recommend tea as a wonderful alternative. There are uncaffeinated teas that exist, all the way up to teas that have way more caffeine than an average cup of coffee, let me tell you. And you can experiment with those. If perhaps coffee's not on your front, tea can be a powerful alternative and a great source of antioxidants. Green tea, for instance, has been studied in much the same way that coffee has, not to the same extent, because there's not as many green tea drinkers as there are coffee drinkers in the world. But, well, I haven't looked that up, but I think that might be true. I'll have to look that up. Scratch the science of that particular claim. In the research, if you look for coffee studies, it's much easier to find large-scale coffee studies than it is to find large-scale green tea studies. But in the green tea studies that exist, there is quite a bit of evidence that the antioxidants in green tea shake a stick to the benefits of coffee. Things like lowered risk of mortality, lowered risk of liver disease, lowered risk of type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, lowered risk of depression. All of those things also exist for green tea drinkers. So that said, that's a viable alternative if you want some of these benefits. And with a little bit of honey in there, and honey does have a different profile of sugar than just adding a teaspoon of table sugar, in addition to some of the properties that real honey actually has, like inoculating you against some of the allergens in your locale if you're having local honey. That can be a positive alternative for you as well. So hear me out here. Coffee can be very good for you. as long as it's not causing you any negative effects from a caffeine perspective, or as long as you're not consuming way too much sugar with your coffee, because that kind of negates the whole protecting effect thing that it might have. Coffee can be very, very good for you. And if you're one of the individuals who can't have coffee on a regular basis, then I would recommend tea as a powerful alternative. Not soda, not decaffeinated coffee, tea. So I hope you'll give those things a shot. I'm looking forward to this discussion about whether or not you enjoy coffee and alternatives for those who might not enjoy it or can't have it on a regular basis. For me in my house, or at least for me, my wife's not really into it, but for me, coffee is what's with breakfast. So guys, this has been Alex Van Houten in Better Daily Live. Thank you for joining me for Nutrition Tip Tuesday, and tomorrow is Wednesday. I'm looking forward to that, and until then, it's just 1%. You got this.
Thank you for joining us for 1% Better today. Don't forget to subscribe for the podcast. Leave us a raving review to tell others how Better Daily has helped you in your journey. If you want more Better Daily, download our app and join our Betterment family at betterdaily.live. Use code POD to get 25% off your subscription. That's POD, all caps, to save 25% on your subscription. We all have a cross to carry. It's lighter when we do it together. Go to betterdaily.live today.